and entrepreneur straight out of New York City, Michael Chernow. What's cracking?
We do this event called Mind and Muscle, and it comes from this place. We've done over 100 of these now, where I learned it with my boys. You probably see this yourself. Like, if you start asking them, how are they doing? How are they feeling? It's instinctual. Men just tend to lock up. And it's like, I'm fine. I'm okay. And then you're like, no, how are you doing? How are you actually doing? How are you feeling? For my boys, the trick was getting them moving. Like, my son, when he was 3, I'd start pushing him on the swing, chatterbox, like immediately start opening up. So the concept was, if we could do a body weight workout, or we could do a breath work, or we could do something where guys are physically moving their bodies, it opens them up to be vulnerable emotionally, mentally. If I said to you, hey, Mike, come over, we're going to have like a men's group therapy session, you'd have been like, no, not into it. I mean, you might have been, but like most guys would be like, sorry, like I've got anything else. And
I'm going to be sick that day, actually.
Yeah. But getting guys to move gets them to then open up and emotionally respond.
What up, y'all? Welcome back to the Creatures of Habit podcast. Today I've got 2 guests in the house. These guys co-founded a brand that I love. I happen to be wearing one of their shirts here. The company is called Rhone, R-H-O-N-E. Chances are you have heard of it, and if you haven't, get your shit together, because they're doing amazing things. Nate Checketts and Ben Checketts are brothers. I don't know which role either of them play at the company, but I know that they run it together, and it's an amazing brand. It's an amazing business that they've created.
Just so you know, Ben is chief instigator. It's like saying wildly inappropriate things.
Chief troublemaker. But I've been warned by our head of PR on this podcast. I will keep it tight. I promise.
Yep. We've got HR in the room, so nobody's getting into trouble here. We will bleep out
guarantees.
anything. But I've had the pleasure of being able to get to know these guys over the years and also participate in some really cool things that they've done, especially one that I'd like to call out that I think is so important and so powerful and was really, really powerful for me being there. They have a community of men that get together and get vulnerable and talk about mental health. And I think that is something that we need a way more of in the current climate that we all live in, where men, for some reason, don't get the ability to, or are afraid, or don't feel it's necessary to get vulnerable. And at Rhone, they make it part of their mission to get men to start talking. And it was really wonderful to be there for that. So I'm excited to have the guys on the show. We're going to talk about a lot of good things. Gents, welcome.
It's great being here. This is cool. I think I've done the pod before, but it was like during COVID. So this is an upgrade. I get to see your handsome Italian face.
You know, we were talking about before the cameras were rolling, this idea that I used to get this all day long and all night, right? When I was opening restaurants and running restaurants in New York City, my job was to lead the people that were running the restaurants, but also to connect with human beings at scale, right? Like that is like really, I think if I were to peel it all back and say, okay, what actually is it, Chernow? It is connecting with humans at scale. That's what I love to do.
Relationship building.
Yeah, that's it, right? Like the business of businesses, relationships. I think the function of happiness in life is relationships. Why don't you guys give us a breakdown of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I can start. I'm Ben, younger brother. I am the creative director, so I get all the fun stuff. I do all of our content, all of our social media, all of our design, and then I also get to weigh in on product. And that's very much directionally. I don't have any expertise in product, but I say, this is what we're seeing in the market. This is where I think we should go. We need to turn over these styles, explore here. And so those are the 2 areas of the business that I really handle.
Awesome.
I get the great fortune of making sure that we have money and that the business is growing.
And I spend it. That's the nice part.
But it's been honestly just like the greatest blessing in our lives to be able to do this together. I mean, you said it. Relationships really are the lifeblood of people. We're naturally social creatures, and what's unique for us is, we grew up in a big family. There's 6 kids. And Ben and I, there's actually a brother in between us. But to be able to spend my work day with somebody that I care so much about and that I just instinctually trust, and after 10 years, that bond has only gotten significantly stronger. Like that, there's no amount of money that I would trade that for. There's just nothing that, like, that's just, when I think about my greatest blessings in life, it is right at the top of my list that I get to do this. I get to spend my work day with my best friend in the world. And so we think very differently. We have very different skill sets, but we also really trust each other. And I think that's just gotten better, and that's made the business better over time.
I'm so happy that you brought that up, because I think it's important to point out the fact that you guys are partners and you're brothers. And you guys also don't live in the same city. So
No.
you have some distance from each other,
Yeah.
which I think is probably healthy. Right? I have been in business with essentially my best friend, and who we grew up together. We started the business as best friends. Certainly did not finish as best friends.
Yeah.
Took a 4-year sabbatical, and now we are best friends again. Essentially, could be like better friends than we were before. I want to talk about partnership, because I think that's a really interesting topic to kick off with, because I've got you guys here together.
Yeah.
What happens when you guys disagree?
Well, I think what Nate highlighted is the most key part, which is we trust. And we also have pretty clear lines of roles and responsibilities. So the trust part, just to harken back to that for a second, there's no amount of failure or success that would ever jeopardize our relationship. And we've agreed on that early on. Like, whether we hit it big or whether the business fails tomorrow, like, we're never going to stop being brothers, and we're never going to stop loving each other, supporting each other, et cetera.
Have you had to check in on that?
Yeah, I think there's been times, where hey, what's going on? Seems like maybe you're at me a little bit. Let's talk through it. And I think it's just an understanding of life changes and things going on externally that can affect that. But at every point in the business, it's been together. And I think Nate does a very good job of, as the CEO, I think he gets a lot of natural attention from people externally. He's always done a very good job of bringing me in and celebrating me, even though it's the least comfortable thing in the world for me. I very much like to be behind the lens, behind the camera, and I love celebrating him because he deserves every second of it. So I think that trust and that love really build a foundation for it. And then having clear roles and responsibilities is helpful, because if we disagree, but it's not Nate's area, he says, I trust you to make that decision. And a lot of times it's the wrong decision, and we learn from it and move on, or vice versa. If it's his area of business, but I disagree, I trust him to make the decision. And we never, ever Monday morning quarterback each other. I think that's the biggest thing of, well, I did warn you, right? I did say it was a bad idea. It's that kind of crap just undermines everything, and we really have learned to cut that out. I don't think it was ever a problem, but anytime it's ever become even a potential issue, we've called it out. We've been very honest with each other. And again, it's all trust it builds that foundation for it. If we weren't to trust each other completely, none of this would be possible.
It's super tricky, right? Like, because in a family relationship or a family business, you naturally will have people who will say things like, oh, there's a nepotism component, or there's some, and I just kind of knocked that out right in the beginning when we hire someone, especially someone senior on the team. I'm like, I just want you to know, Ben is my best friend. Nothing will ever get in the way of that. Like, don't cross us. Don't even try. Because it is the most important thing. And to me, it comes down to prioritization. Like, we were fortunate. We grew up in an incredible household with 2 parents that loved each other and that, raised us to care about each other. And they emphasized that relationship and that bond above all else. I was telling a story to somebody the other day. We have a place in our house that our parents call the port. And growing up, I just thought it was like the living room or a study, or like, the kind of weird names that people give rooms in a house.
Or maybe even some like East Coast nautical thing that we didn't
we
fully
were
understand.
like, whatever, this is weird. And I'd go to friends' house and I'm like, hey, where's your port? They're like, but what are you talking about? So this is where we would gather at the end of the day, almost every day. I mean, I'd be lying if I said it was 100%, but it was like 80+%. Every single day we ended there. I know you're a man of faith. We ended with family prayer. And like, you could be mad at each other. You could have just been beating each other up, which happened a lot. But we ended every day together. And so that was the most important thing in our family. And so when you have that as your base, as your foundation, nothing else matters. If we blow a family relationship that, spent 36 years building, for what amount of money would you trade that? Zero. There's not an amount of money on this planet that I would trade it for. So, there are times when I'll call him and I'm like, hey, I don't think we did a good enough job here. Like, we need to do better. Or he'll be like, hey, I think da-da-da-da-da. And we just both go back to the prioritization of the most important thing is our relationship. Like, no amount of money. There's not and like, when you have that is, I think that's the foundation of a successful marriage or partnership. Mm-hmm. And the biggest challenge is you can't control that because you need both people to be committed to the same ideal. And when you lose that, which naturally happens in a partnership because people start to, like Ben has 3 kids. He has one on the way. He's got 4. He'll have 4 kids soon. I have 3 kids. We have our own families. And when money matters about having a certain kind of lifestyle with your family, it's easy for those to come in crossroads. But again, you just go back to wouldn't sacrifice it, won't do it. It's not happening.
Christmas at the Checketts must be madhouse.
Wow. There's now 20 grandkids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's madness. Doesn't begin to describe
I'm listening to you guys talk about it, and before I opened up the meatball shop with Dan, we were advised to read a book called The E-Myth Revisited.
Oh yeah, I read it.
And it was written by this guy, Michael Gerber, who was formerly homeless and figured out his life and became this super prolific, very, very articulate guy who understood business. And in the book, it very clearly states that arguably the most important component of partnership is a clear delineation of labor. That could be the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And a respect from one another in that particular department.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And once that goes, I think that's probably the first thing to go in most partnerships, that lack of respect and trust that the person that's written out their scope doesn't have the ability to actually pull it off. When one partner thinks that of another, it's kind of hard to come back from.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's so easy because when you really think about it, partnership is 2 completely different human beings, completely different DNA, completely different upbringings. Chances are completely different goals in terms of long-term life goals.
What they value, what they
Daniel and
care
I
about.
went on, this is funny, Daniel and I went on a camping trip. We said, all right, we're going to go on a business together. We've been best friends since we're kids, but let's really get after it and let's do something crazy. So we went to hike the presidential
the
peaks,
White Mountains.
The White Mountains.
Yeah.
I just did that this summer with my boys.
So we did that, and we hit all the peaks, and it was a 5-day hike, and it was sideways torrential rain the whole time.
Worst
I got
weather
hypothermia
in the country.
It was absolutely terrible. Well, I think top of Mount Washington is actually the worst weather ever recorded.
Yeah, highest wind ever recorded globally, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're there, right? And we have this moment. I think it was on our first night or second night or whatever. And I'm like, all right, dude. So really, what is it?
Yeah.
What do you want? What do you actually want? And he looked at me, no thought, no flinch, nothing. I want to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
Out just boom, just you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was born to say that,
Yeah.
right? And then he was like, "Oh, what about you?" And I was like, happy family, dog, comfort, happy, successful, obviously, but I'm I want to have a house and a family that we're super comfortable. We're not worried about shit. And so it was very clear right then and there that we were way different in terms of our long-term plan. And it's no surprise that as we, pushed forward in the business, the two brains just started firing in different ways.
Well, and the long-term goals start to come at odds with each other too. It's like if the goal is to maximize profitability and back to the founders, and somebody else's goal is I want to be a great father and husband, those will come at odds quickly. Mm-hmm. It's like, why are you going home at 8:30 p.m.? It's like, because I want to tuck my son in tonight, know?
Yeah.
And again, it's just, I wouldn't say we're perfect by any stretch. The one thing I know is just we share the same set of values, and that helps resolve so much conflict.
So I think to sort of put a cap on this piece, anybody listening who is either thinking about being or creating a business with a partner, which I totally advocate for, but I do think that there should be some boundaries that are set early on, right?
Yeah.
Get through all the hard shit first, but I want to hear from you guys. So it's people that are about to walk into business and or are in business with a partner and it's not going in the best direction.
I
great
mean,
question.
I just think it's really, really tough. And we're almost like, I don't know that we can even come from a place of authority because we're spoiled by our setup. But I do think that we as a society have gotten progressively worse at having difficult conversations. And difficult conversations build relationships. It's just like anything else. If you want to grow in the gym, you've got to lift something heavy. If you want to, get more resilient, you've got to expose yourself to, cold and high temperatures. If you want to strengthen relationships of steel, they've got to be forged in fire. And sometimes that means saying, hey, I really don't enjoy when you do A, B, C, or D. And I'm willing to hear when you tell me that, you don't enjoy A, B, C, and D too. And if you don't have that, and if you're unable to have that, it's not going to work. I always think about business partnerships and relationships similar to dating in the sense that people, when they're dating, they tend to close one eye and ignore the other person's weaknesses, faults. And then when they get married, they open both eyes and they see every fault and problem that the person has. But in reality, we should be doing the exact opposite of that. When you're hunting for a partner, you should be eyes wide open. You should have those hard conversations up front. And then when you are in a partnership, you should close one eye because otherwise you do exactly what you talked about, which is maybe there's somebody else that could be better at his job than him. Maybe I should consider high. As soon as you go down that path of looking for all faults, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, and I would go back to what I said about high trust and just clarify one thing. It's not blind trust. Nate still very much has, visibility into what I'm doing. I still very much have a way in visibility on what he's doing. But it's once the decision is being made, we leave it to the decision maker. You see this through and you learn from it. It's that marriage of high trust. And then the other one that I forgot to kind of mention is this idea of high expectations. We have the same end goal, which is not to build $1 billion brand. That would be great. But to build a brand that matters, to build a brand that influences people in a very positive way. And, being completely open and vulnerable, we throw around this word of balance all the time, right? And if you think about someone who's balancing on a slack line or a tightrope walker, they're not in perfect equilibrium the whole time, right? They're right, they're leaning right, they overcorrect to the left.
There's anxiety involved in that.
Yeah. There's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of correction. And sometimes you overcorrect and it's like, oh, he's gonna fall for sure. So the idea of balance isn't you're in perfect equilibrium all the time. It's no, find those small course corrections, but always come back to what is center. What's the most important?
Add to that, because I love that analogy, balance is made possible through boundary setting.
Yes.
And so what I've learned is it's never like you see the wave, right? That perfect that's like the balance, right? That's just simply not true. It's just not. It's not true. It never happens. It's never it's just up and down and up and down. It's like, rocket ship down,
Yeah.
you know? But what I've learned as I've grown as an entrepreneur, as a husband, father, is that the thing that does not ever change for me now, and I'm zero shame in saying it, are my boundaries.
Yeah.
When I start and when I finish. Those are fucking
Those are
hard
firm.
and
Yeah,
fast.
yeah.
Hard
Those
and
are firm.
fast. Unless, obviously, if I'm traveling.
Yeah.
But, like, I love what you said about the port, right? I can count, honestly, I don't even think on one hand the amount of times my mother, father, sister, and I sat down and had dinner throughout my whole childhood. Never did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just didn't happen. Never did it.
Yeah.
My mother would make some chicken and potatoes. You would take it into your room and you would, or sit in the couch in the living room and eat it, right?
Yeah.
Like, my father never, it didn't happen. My wife never missed dinner with her family.
Yeah.
Every night. Ever, ever, ever. When Finley was born, I had just opened up Seymour's. Unfortunately, there was no way
It's, yeah,
I
impossible.
could have dinner.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so for the first 2 years of that kid's life, I have very few regrets in my life, but that is one. I did not have dinner with my wife and son for
Yeah.
most nights.
Yeah.
And I kind of had this realization, like, whatever it was, 7, 8 years ago, where I said, or 7 years ago, this is absolutely fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I am a CEO of a company where I am expected to miss my whole family.
Yeah.
Like, I'm expected to work 18 hours. Like that's in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me expecting that
Yeah.
of me.
Absolutely.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Like, I would imagine, you can say, I've heard the phrase, investors love founders that are not married and don't have kids. And in my mind, I'm like, wait a second. Like, you actually want founders that are married and have kids. Why? Because that guy is going to fight for his fucking life
Yeah.
to make
His
sure
back's
that
against the
family
wall.
is supported and fed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy who doesn't have wife and kids is, maybe that guy's going to work or that gal is going to work more, potentially, but also is going to go hard and party and not show up to the board meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'll
So-
tell you, so I founded my first real venture-backed business pretty young. I was 24, mobile software startup, and we got to a place where it was a crazy situation. My investors brought in a CEO. They were like, "You're too young. You don't know what you're doing." And I was like, "Yeah, that's probably true. I don't know what I'm doing." And then they ended up firing the CEO and putting me back in place when the business basically had no capital left. And I remember going home and looking at my newborn son, my oldest son, who's now 14, and being like, how did I let myself get here? I am going to claw, scrape, fight until I'm out of this. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, I will not let this go down. I'm going to figure this out. We figured out how to sell the assets, and I immediately started picking up consulting contracts, and I figured a way out and ended up taking a job all the way back east, and that's what brought me back east to work at the NFL. But it was 100% looking down at my son in the crib and being like, I'm not going to fail for you. I won't. Yeah, your father's going to make this happen. I'm going to figure it out. I think working parents, that's a powerful emotion. And some of our, I can't differentiate, but we have really amazing working mothers at our company. I can't tell them that they're not going to go home at 5 or they're not going to come, before 9. That's the schedule that works for them. But they're the most productive humans on planet Earth.
Yeah.
A mom, holy cow, they can get more done in a day than I could dream of in a month.
You've heard that phrase, like, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. My new phrase is, if you want something done well, give it to a working mom. She will do it, and she will do it well, and she will do it efficiently. And I think it really is because, especially at a startup like ours, we view it a little bit as an education, right? I tell people all the time, like, don't go to business school, because I did. Go start a company. You'll learn way more. But also, have kids, get married, have kids. Like you're getting educated and schooled every day in two very different arenas and humbled. Being a father has made me a better manager. Being a manager has made me a better father, and vice versa. I feel like I'm just a perpetual student and getting perpetually taught by people who depend on me and who I support, and who, ultimately at the end of the day, we're all gonna get through this together.
I love that we're talking about family and kids and how it correlates to work and entrepreneurship and leadership and ambition and drive. I was at a dinner the other night. One of my investors put on a dinner where he invited all of the local New York portfolio companies. I actually hosted it at the Meatball Shop, and there was like 15 founders there. It was really cool. And Brian Cohen, one of our investors, his son is his partner in the little investment arm that they have, and both of his sons were there, but he has 3 kids. And something that I was blown away by that Brian did with his kids was, he's an entrepreneur. Yeah. Brian is like, he started the New York Angels. I mean, he's like he's invested in more New York startups than anyone ever, I think.
Wow.
That's like, he's like the thing. They're currently invested in like 40 New York startups.
That's cool.
He made all of his kids start a business before 25. And they all did, and they've all exited.
Yeah.
And it was like emotional for me to see that, because they were there.
Yeah.
And they were talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's I've always said with my boys, it's hard for me, once if you are an entrepreneur, it's hard to shake it, right? Like you can't.
It's part of you.
It's part of you. And so I've always been it since I can remember. I mean, I was selling toys on the corner of 82nd, 7th Street and 2nd Avenue when I was like 5. I was like begging my sister, I was like going to comic book stores and buying baseball cards, opening up the packs, setting up outside of the baseball card shop and selling the cards that I didn't want back to the kids coming in and out. Like I was always thinking that way.
Yeah.
And like I always said to my wife, like, I'm never going to force our kids to do anything. I'm not going to make them play sports. I'm not going to make them do anything. The only thing I'm going to force upon them is New York Giants. That's it. That's the only thing. And it's
which is painful.
That's such a burden to pass on.
It's really hard.
Having to watch my 11-year-old cry after the last game, I'm like, I feel personally responsible for this.
I was on an airplane watching that game. And I told Nate this story.
Game,
the woman next to me took off her headphones and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not okay. I just need some time."
It was so hard, and I was sitting next to Saquon Barkley's sister. And I didn't find out until she asked me a question about Saquon Barkley, and I didn't say the nicest thing.
Oh boy!
Even though I love that guy,
yeah.
I didn't say anything bad. But she asked me, she was like, why do they always send Saquon down the middle? And I was like, well, it's the beginning of the season, and they want to protect him.
Yeah, you don't want him to get hurt on the upland field.
He's gonna. If he breaks out too soon, the guy gets hurt.
Yeah.
And she was like, what? I was like, well, he does. He gets hurt. I mean, he's gotten hurt twice and missed 2 full seasons of football. He goes, yeah, that's my brother. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So you want him running up the middle.
Yeah. But anyway, like trying to get my boys to, it's so interesting to see the difference between my 2 sons. They're deep into Pokemon cards now. Okay. Pokemon cards through the roof.
It's a big thing.
7, 8,
5, and 8.
Oh, okay.
And they both are all about it, Pokemon cards. And in the beginning, when they first started getting into it, I was like, all right, I'm going to buy them some Pokemon cards. Yeah. Their friends got Pokemon cards. I'm going to hook them up.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, dudes. They kept on asking me for Pokemon cards. I'm like, no. This is where it's going to start here. Yep. I was like, you guys are not getting Pokemon cards anymore.
Yeah.
You're going to earn them.
Yeah.
So on Saturday, you're going to do 100 air squats, 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, and 50 ring rows. Both kids. Bang them out every Saturday. And then I was like, because this started this summer, I was like, you guys can make as much lemonade as you want. I will supervise. I will get the stuff for you. I'll help you. You'll pay me labor. You'll pay me cogs. We'll go out. I'll set the whole thing up. You guys market it however you want. Make signs, big signs. Go out there with your shirt off. Go crazy. These kids, my older son, zero interest.
Yeah.
My younger son,
all about
savage.
it. Yeah.
It's so crazy to see.
And you're like, who is lifeguarding this gene pool? But I have 3 boys. They could not be more different.
They're all different.
And what's funny is finding your kid's currency is really important because I know families that are like, look, this is our currency. This is how we think about, encouraging and motivating our kids. What I found is my older son, he was coin operated super quick. Like he got the money thing really, really fast. So it was like, hey, you want to earn $50 to, go do whatever? Great. This is how much it is if you do A, B, C, or D. My middle son, who's like our wild child, he's really fun, very charismatic. He loves candy. That's like he told me he wanted to open a candy shop. So I was like, normally we don't let him eat very much candy. It was like, instead of $10, he would get a Snickers bar. Like I could say, I'm going to pay you $10 if you do 5 hours worth of labor. But if I'm like, hey, I'm going to give you a Snickers bar, he would run through a brick wall.
And he hasn't caught on to the math of
you
he could buy
get
10
in trouble.
Snickers bar.
HR, 5 hours, $10. He was joking.
Child labor.
Totally joking.
Yeah. No, it's required. But no, I think finding their currency and appealing to them, and it's evolved as they've aged. Like, they want different things now, but I remember them when they were in that Pokemon. Like, what's funny is the kids are so different but the great unifier? Pokemon cards.
It's, and by the way, these kids are pulling Pokemon cards out of these packs that are worth like $100.
Yeah.
You know?
It's amazing.
So the Creatures of Habit podcast, Creatures of Habit, obviously I have a thing with habits. My habits almost killed me. I was able to get a little bit of grace in my life and then get a lot of grace, and I'm grateful for the grace. And I changed my life with good habits. So I replaced the bad ones with the good ones. And so I'd like to give the listeners here some insight into habits, or the guests that come on the show, kind of a few things that they do, either in their morning routine if they have one, in their evening routine or wind down routine if they have one, or just some habits throughout the day that have really helped give them serenity, give them organization, give them peace of mind, groundness, So why don't, whichever one wants to go. I mean, whoever has a morning routine is a big one.
Morning routine is huge. My morning routine is a little bit different every day. I'll talk about a couple habits that I've really leaned into in the past 6 months that I feel like have helped me immensely. One is breath work, and like deep intentional breath work. I love the State app. I don't know if you've used that app.
No.
4 very simple exercises. One is like be present. One is be alert. One is go to sleep, right? Like they're in different categories. And so just taking 5 to 15 minutes throughout my day and doing really deep intentional breath work has actually really helped me I wouldn't say that I have clinical depression or anxiety, but with those feelings that everybody has.
So is it a guided breathwork app?
It is a guided, but it just gives you kind of like little musical cues that you catch on to very easily, and you actually build up. So they ask you after each session, was that easy? Did you feel better? Could we go longer next time? And you kind of build up.
Awesome. The State app?
State, yeah.
State.
I think it's like $30 a year. So it's like,
Very cool. I haven't heard of it.
$3 a month.
I love learning new stuff like that.
Love that app. It's a great app. Very simple, very relaxing.
By the way, the first thing that our last guest, Dr. Graham, said in terms of habit for health, first thing he said was breath work.
Breath work.
First thing he said.
It's made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah.
The second thing, and I was actually reminded of this by a board member of ours this week, is getting back to like pen and paper. And, again, finding whatever currency works for you, if it's sketching or journaling or writing. I was an English major. I love writing. Writing on a computer to me is different. It's soul sucking. I hate it. But writing pen and paper for whatever reason. So I try and do, again, 5 to 10 minutes of just creative writing. Sometimes it comes out in poems. Sometimes it comes out in like short stories. Sometimes it just comes out in like, word webs and ideas. And sometimes it's about Rhone. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's about my family. Sometimes it's not. I just don't put creative restrictions on it, and I just write.
And you'll fit these in throughout the day?
Throughout the day,
can.
yeah. If I
He's
have
a great writer.
If I have 5 to 10 minutes break in a call, I'll pull out my notebook. But again, pen and paper for me is big. It's a little analog. It's a little old school. I'm not like a hipster. I don't carry a typewriter, but like it just gets me into that mode where I'm away from a screen for 5 to 10 minutes, and it just completely refreshes things.
Only because I have to say this. When I was a senior in high school, Ben was in 8th grade, and I was given...
I wonder if they can pull your diploma over this. This
yeah,
would be
yeah.
bad.
I may need to be careful. I was given an assignment to write like a 10-page creative brief. I was second semester senior. I'm looking for every reason not to do something. And I went home night before papers due, and I see on our family computer a paper that Ben wrote, and I started reading it. It was about like some creative Revolutionary War hero. Like, this is freaking good. Like, so I changed one word on this paper, which was the first name, turned it in, and I got a better grade on the paper than he did.
I got like a B, and he got an A+.
Oh my
A
God,
minus,
that is
A minus.
unbelievable.
Yeah, one of my better accomplishments.
So, yeah.
is
And
so
I was in
good.
middle school. I was like, what? This
That is
doesn't make any sense.
so good.
But here's
I
the
didn't
best part
even
about
think-
Ben is he wasn't like he wasn't mad at me. He was just like, how did you get a better
I was
grade?
mad at my teacher.
Yeah.
I was like,
So funny that
So.
you wrote the paper. You could have written a paper on anything, so you just grabbed his paper.
I was like, yeah, the full flexibility. This is before plagiarism was fully monitored the way it is
Yeah.
with ChatGPT. and
yeah,
everything.
exactly. So those are my two.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Nate?
I would say the habit that I think is most important in my life goes back to what we were talking about with the wire act, high wire act is, I think there's so much emphasis on goal setting and not nearly enough emphasis on goal monitoring and checking in. So I have a weekly habit of going in, looking at my goals that I've set. How am I doing on them? What's my progress? And it's a Sunday night thing. I always review it, and it sets up my whole week. And I just think that staying on track changes because we are always out of balance, but the trick is to not go too high or too low. And so that micro balance, micro correction is crucial for me because I'm an extremist. Like, I start eating something, I'm going to eat that every single day. Just a shout out to Creatures of Habit. Meal one, it's still called Meal One?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Meal one was my lifeblood when I was training for the marathon last year. I had that every single day because it was the best way to start before a long run. Best way probably to start, but like I'm crazy that way. So it's easy for me to get overly like tilted one way or the other, and finding that self-check-in is really, really important. And then the other thing for me, which I don't think I talked openly about last time, but you kind of like guided me back to it, is prayer. Like, prayer is crucial for me, just being humble, realizing like, when you build a company, we now have, with our retail stores, almost 200 employees. And we walk into a store and they're just like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. It's so nice to meet you. It's easy to start believing that you are something. And the most important thing to me is to not ever develop that ego. Ego is the enemy. I really do believe that. I think it leads to bad decision making, mistakes, and I love the idea of being on your knees and understanding that there is something greater than you, and that there's a greater life force, and that we're all equals. We're brothers and sisters, and those things are really important to me.
We were always taught, this was kind of, when we were kids, nobody talked about meditation unless you were, in a different world, grew up in a different country. We were always taught that when you pray, not only should you pray and should you be thinking about things, but you should also take some time throughout the prayer, at the end of the prayer, just to listen. And whether that's your own internal thoughts or whether that's thoughts that you believe are coming from a divine source, that has helped me tremendously throughout my life, is just that period of, again, just reflection and taking a second, because it's easy to pray and let it be like a grocery list of items of like, hey, I would really love this, this, and this, and protect my family and this, and just be done with it. It's a different level to sit there for a second and think, what is it that you want for me? What is it that I can find in my life? And so whatever form that takes for you, whether it is prayer or whether it is meditation, I think it's crucial.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I mean, you know, it is, prayer for me is the most, it is the foundation of my day every day. I kind of think of a day like building a structure, right? And you can roll out of bed and, you know, take a piss, look at your phone, or snooze, walk past your unmade bed and like rush to get your shit together. And that would be kind of like building a structure on like dirt.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as it rains hard enough, that dirt is going to turn into mud. The mud is going to move the structure, and over time that structure is going to ultimately fall, right? For me, prayer is the first thing I do every morning. I was just saying, you know, like for me, it's prayer, push-ups, and poses. I do my prayers, I do my push-ups, and then I do my yoga poses. And prayer is pouring concrete for me, you know. And I do believe that prayer is tough for some people to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's controversial for some people that have not the greatest experience with potential organized religion.
Yep.
You know, but when I first got into prayer, I was a mentor of mine that was actually introducing me to this. Basically said to me, "Look, dude, like you don't have to pray to anything objective.
Yeah.
You know, like you could be praying to a higher self if that's how you need to get into it.
Yeah.
But taking time every single day to show some humility and understand that you are not everything. Because if you were everything, there'd be nothing." And I was like, all right. I mean, that makes sense,
that
right?
makes sense
Like,
to me.
I'm not everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of people walk through life thinking that that person, what they did is because I did this, and you know they're
on their own
about
Truman
me,
Show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you know, I think what prayer does is it gives us this opportunity to just like have a few moments in the beginning of the day to just say, hey, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's just not about me. And oh, by the way, I can use as much help as possible.
Yes.
You know?
Totally.
Like that is as simple as it gets for me with prayer. I ask for as much help, and not like, oh, the car, the house, you know. I'm like, no, like grace and gratitude, please. Like bring as much joy and sunlight to my friends and family and the people that I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
Like I think it's such a practice of humility. And I think when you said, you know, ego is your enemy, I believe the reason why, you know, in the restaurant world, there was a point where I had 14 restaurants in New York City, right? And I would go into the restaurants, there was over 350 people in each company, and I'd go into a restaurant, and not only like did the staff get fired up, but like the guests were like, hey, you know?
Yeah.
And I honestly believe the foundation for me not breaking out of that humility was my prayer practice, 100%.
Yeah.
Because I think that like the ego is not your amigo, man.
That's
Yeah.
That should be your new book. The ego is not your amigo. I mean, I think there's something so powerful in an exchange of emotions where words are not even required.
Yeah.
Where you can transmit and receive feelings, and that's a form of communication that it's hard to have with most people. So yeah, those are the things that matter a lot to me foundationally. And then there's others. I had a friend say to me that he had just come back from his grandparents' 60th wedding anniversary. I was like, that's so cool. He said, you know what was cool is I was talking to my grandma, and I said, what's it like to be married to the same man for 60 years? And she said, I feel like I've been married to 6 different men for 60 years because he has different hobbies, interests, and he's evolved and changed. And I was like, that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like I've had different periods where I've gotten into different things, And variety is helpful, but there are some things that are foundational that can give way to that variety. So like for me, there have been changes and evolutions, and I like the idea to be open to it. Like I've just gotten really into cold plunging and sauna, like started during the pandemic. I don't know if that'll ever go away because I'm really freaking addicted to it, but I didn't do that 10 years ago, you know?
You mentioned grace, and just really quickly, right off the back of that, I love this line by Walt Whitman. He's my favorite poet, and my 2-year-old is named Walter after Walt Whitman. And he has this line that I absolutely love. He says, because he in the poem, and his form is very much free verse. Like he's just writing. Nothing rhymes. Nothing really goes together in terms of a pentameter or any tempo or anything like that. And he says,
English major.
Pentameter. I was about to say that.
He says, do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contain multitudes. Mm-hmm. And I just love that line. It's like that grace to give to yourself of like, you could believe one thing today, it could be different tomorrow, but just be patient with yourself. And again, that comes back to prayer and reflection and gratitude and just saying, you're a person that's evolving and changing and finding new habits, finding things that you're into. That's totally okay. You contain multitudes. You contain everybody who came before you and everybody who will come after.
The conversation that we're having, I think, is so powerful because basically I think it's stripped down to vulnerability, right? Like we're 3 dudes sitting here talking about grace and prayer, right? On a podcast. But also, like, I've had a hard time not talking about it in my content, even on podcasts.
Yeah.
This idea that fear plays into everything. Mm-hmm. It is part of everything. It is always there. It is not going anywhere, and we judge ourselves so much because of how we respond to it.
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. Like it is always there. It's part of the human condition. We have a trigger inside of our biology that flicks on when it happens, you know, and it actually it releases hormones that actually affect us physically, yet we still judge ourselves around fear and how, you know, why I should not be scared right now for whatever reason. Like, as an entrepreneur, it's always scary.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is always.
That might be an understatement.
Yeah, it's always scary.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, I think I've gotten pretty good at like this state of existence that fear is always present. And I know that like if I brush it under the rug or if I run away from it in any way, if I turn my back on fear, it will put me in a rear naked choke and send me to the ground.
Yeah, it will win.
It will win.
Yeah.
And it'll find you.
It'll find you.
It'll find you no matter what.
And I think when you're put in a position where like no matter what happens, no matter how many people you have on your squad, if it doesn't pan out the way you want, doesn't matter whose fault it is, you're going to deal with it, right? It's on you.
Yeah.
And so that's the hardest part about it. But I guess to the point that I'm trying to make is everyone is scared.
Something, yeah.
Everyone is scared a lot of the time. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Like having patience and understanding that, yes, you know, Mike Tyson walking from the locker room to the ring, he has said over and over again, the baddest dude in the world is always scared. And his opponent definitely does not think he's scared.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like there was a story, I don't remember if it was Courage is Calling or like Obstacle is the Way, or it was like one of these books that I've recently read. And it was about these armies, and there was this, and it was in World War I or something like that, maybe World War I, small army, really, really strong leader, knew that there was an army that they were opposing that was just
stronger.
10 to 1, 20 to 1, 100 to 1, something crazy like that. You know, it's like no chance. But that leader, that army, did not know how small they were.
Yeah.
And this leader said to the small army, they're scared too. Watch. We're gonna roll over there and we're gonna find out that they're scared too.
Yeah.
it's not just us. They're scared too. So let's walk in knowing that. And sure enough, they got over the hill, and that army heard them coming.
Turned and ran.
They bailed.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's a long way of saying, like, and this is me speaking out loud to myself, it's okay to be afraid.
I mean, when we had that event that you came to, and I remember that we had some really awesome guys there. I mean, we do this event called Mind and Muscle, and it comes from this place. We've done over 100 of these now, where I learned it with my boys. You probably see this yourself. Like, if you start asking them, how are they doing? How are they feeling? It's instinctual. Men just tend to lock up. And it's like, I'm fine. I'm okay. And then you're like, no, how are you doing? How are you actually doing? How are you feeling? For my boys, the trick was getting them moving. Like, my son, when he was 3, I'd start pushing him on the swing, chatterbox, like immediately start opening up. So the concept was, if we could do a body weight workout, or we could do a breath work, or we could do something where guys are physically moving their bodies, it opens them up to be vulnerable emotionally, mentally. If I said to you, hey, Mike, come over, we're going to have like a men's group therapy session, you'd have been like, no, not into it. I mean, you might have been, but like most guys would be like, sorry, like I've got anything else. And
I'm going to be sick that day, actually. Yeah.
But getting guys to move gets them to then open up and emotionally respond. And I remember that session specifically. We had guys open up about real stuff, real deep stuff. And it was so powerful. And this idea of shared discomfort, that we're all scared of something, that we're all trying to do our best, that immediately makes us more relatable and feel safer with ourselves. It's just about perspective. And I think when we can put our natural challenge, our human condition in front of each other and be like, it doesn't matter how you grew up, where you came from, your parents, whatever, like, we're all struggling with something. And as long as we can start embracing that about each other, and it's okay, I've got you, I've got your back no matter what, that just changes the conversation for me. Yeah. And getting guys to do that in a group with each other, man, afterwards it's like, let's go break down whatever, barrier obstacles in front of us.
Yeah, it's so fun and validating and rewarding to watch these guys walk in. And, a lot of them are the influencer content creator type. So they're just like, they look like they're photoshopped. They're just ripped. They're jacked, whatever.
They look like Mike Chernow.
They look like Mike Chernow. And they walk in and, I think there is also this natural tendency when a group of men get together, I don't know if it's biological, we all just start sizing each other up. And then 30 minutes later, they're like holding each other and one's crying, right? And talking about issues that he's faced. And so that is to say, and going back to your point of this idea of like, we're all afraid and that's okay. As long as we reflect on it, it doesn't disrupt the way that we treat people. My father-in-law he has great sayings, and he says, don't borrow the problems of tomorrow, right? Don't let what could happen affect the way that you live today. And it's so easy to say it, but you just have to constantly remind yourself not to do it, because that's when it's not okay. It's okay to be afraid. It's not okay to let that fear send you into a spiral. Yeah, be in a driver's seat and let you affect the way that you treat people, because that's when it gets destructive.
I think that's it. And I think that is ultimately kind of like the message that I've been trying to put out, even with this podcast, and the guests that I asked to come on the podcast are intentional.
Yeah.
Because they have a very similar message, which is, it's not the fear, it's what you do with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not the fear. Everybody has
denying that it exists won't solve the problem.
Right. It's how are you dealing with it when it comes down the pipe?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is like, in the beginning of the podcast, of this podcast, the intro of this podcast, I say, sit back, relax, and pay attention, because what you hear in this podcast today could potentially change your life. And I don't say that shit because I want to say it to get a trophy.
Yeah, badge of
I
honor.
say it because I actually think that one line right there, which is like, it's not about the fear, it's what you do with it.
Yeah.
It's what you can't, in many cases, I think it's very difficult to control your first thought,
Yeah.
right? Kind of just comes.
It comes.
You know, first thought just kind of comes. But the window of space you give yourself between that first thought and the actual time to react to it physically or verbally or emotionally, that is the barometer of health.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you react very quickly, you need to give yourself a little bit more time. And that, for me, is like, if I'm hungry...
Especially if I'm
yeah,
hungry.
if I'm hungry, if I'm tired,
Oh, yeah.
if I've been,
Fatigue makes cowards of us all.
yeah, like if I could, my time, that window, that window is like non-existent sometimes.
Yeah.
Where my wife is like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, is that?
By the way, one of the greatest things ever is to have a companion, a partner who will hold you accountable
Absolutely.
and not like, appropriately put up with you, but then also not overly indulge you. I love these ideas of mindset shifts because your point of you can't control the first thought is so true. You can't control the hand that you were given either. You can only control your reaction, but that's the most empowering thing because you can control something.
Yeah.
So yesterday I got home, we had 2 days worth of board meetings. We had board in town, we walked through our stores. It's great. Then we had a full deck, like 2 very packed days, late night dinner, and then another late dinner. And I got home and I was shot. I mean, like, I think sleep, I've grown to really prioritize my sleep. I know how important it is, but I had 2 days of like not great sleep. And I get home, my wife's like, hey, you're in charge of the kids for a little bit. I got to go do something. I don't even remember what it was. And my 2 younger boys were like, Dad, let's go jump on the trampoline. And I was like, oh, no, sorry. Like I need some me time right now. I really need some me time. And I was in that state of like, of course, like I just finished these meetings. Like, why can't I just get like 5 minutes for myself? And I've learned to do these powerful mindset shifts where I take a step back and I like almost like reflect on how I'm operating. I'm like, if I change the perspective here of like, oh my gosh, I'm incredibly lucky. I get to live this life. I have these sons at this moment who want to play with me. And yes, you're exhausted, but man, you are lucky. You have no idea how lucky you are.
Yeah.
And as soon as I shifted that, I was like, all right, it's a momentum game. Let's go start, and 30 minutes later, I was having a blast with them. We were having so much fun.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, what if I had indulged that like, everything bad happens to you, that tornado.
What you do with it.
It's how you react, that mindset shift, you get to choose. And your habits can put you in a better place, a better position to help control that reaction. And they can put you in a worse place. So like, it's a lot harder when you're sleep deprived, not eating well, and not taking care of yourself. So set yourself up for success to have a better reaction. But it is so much how you react, how you shift your mindset.
The word privilege, you can tell I love words. I love thinking about words. The word privilege is you say it and people start to cringe nowadays, right? But it is a privilege to do these. It's a privilege to be a father. It's a privilege to work hard. It's a privilege to have responsibilities. Hell, it's a privilege to have mental health challenges because you can get better, you can change your mindset, and then you can help other people. And like, that's just the way, if you start to look at your life that way, and again, like Nate said, we're the worst at this. This is why we think about it and talk about it all the time because
we're the patients.
Our first instinct, we're the patients in the hospital. Our first instinct is to think, she doesn't know what I just went through. She doesn't know what my day's been. These little kids don't know what I've been through. They don't know how tired I am. It is that moment where you have to think, no, this moment right now is a privilege. The present is a privilege.
I get a choice.
Let's do with it what we can.
I think also yes to all of that. And I also want to put a highlight on the choice component, right?
Huge.
Where
agency.
You actually have a choice.
Yeah.
You may not think so, but you can hop into the pity pond or The humility hamper. I actually.
Man, the alliteration is
Let's
on
go.
fire. Ego is my amigo.
The pity pond
like
is
my
great
favorite.
too because you know it's going to be filled with like scum
It's swamp.
and like
It's swamp.
water.
I came up with the humility hamper the other day, which I thought was kind of. Oh, actually, no, I didn't call it the humility hamper. I called it the hope hamper.
Okay.
But where I learned this probably the most in my life was when I first decided that I was going to stop drinking and using drugs. And there was this older person who, like, I would have never thought cared, right, at that point in my life. Walked up to me and said, "Hey, you know you don't have to drink anymore, right?" I was like, and he was like, you have a choice. You don't have to drink anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Wait
Versus being told you're a victim and
of
it's out of your
circumstance,
control.
Yeah. I was like, wait, I don't actually have, like, I can choose.
Yeah.
So, like, when people ask me, and when I ask some people on the podcast, like, oh yeah, how do you wake up at, people, the one I get most is, how do you wake up so early? How do you, go to the gym? How do you, and the answer is, like, I know that I don't have to sleep in.
Yeah.
I don't have to skip the gym. I can, or I can choose to wake up early.
Yeah.
It's not like it's like the perspective of, oh God, I gotta wake up earlier. Oh God, I've got this habit that I committed to. It's like, no, like, I can wake up early.
Yeah.
I get to.
I don't have to sleep in.
Right.
I said that to myself so much while I was training. I don't consider myself an endurance athlete, but I knew I wanted to run this marathon. And so every time I marathon train, this is the worst. I can't believe this, to like, whoa, I get to do this.
Yeah.
That shift.
Are you running the marathon again?
No, not right now. But that for me, that mindset shift of like, I get to do this. I get to be here. I get to have this moment. It's everything with how we react to it. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 25. Shock of my life. I'd always been healthy, never had any issues. I had just gotten off health insurance because I was starting my first company. And in a matter of 3 months, I broke my ankle, got diagnosed with type 1, and my wife was pregnant unexpectedly. And we didn't have health insurance. It was terrifying. I was beyond scared. And that diagnosis has been one of the greatest blessings of my entire life. But I see it time and time again, how I could wake up every single day and get in the pity, what do you call it? The pity
pond.
Pity pond.
With all the frogs.
And by the way, there are
frogs.
There are some days that I do.
Absolutely.
Totally.
We all take a bath in the pity pond.
But
sometimes.
I really do think that mindset shift, just knowing you have the ability to shift it, it's powerful.
Yeah, whether you believe in a higher power or not, you cannot deny that agency choice is such a gift to humanity. People can take away. I mean, required reading in our household was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and it's like the original self-help book written by this amazing man who lived through. He was a prisoner in a concentration camp, and he said the Nazis took everything away from me. The one thing they could never take away from me was my ability to choose how I react. And what a powerful perspective that is from someone who's gone through something
Just
like
living
that,
through hell.
living through actual hell. And so, that was drilled into us from a young age. But again, we're certainly not perfect. There's times where I go into meetings at Rhone and think, this is the last thing I want to do is be on a Zoom for another 45 minutes talking about something I don't care about. And then I have to take
financial calls.
Yeah, usually the financial calls. Sorry, Kate. But taking a step back and saying, I get to build this company. Like, how many people would just kill to have my job and to build this company with their best friend right now? And that perspective, that shift, it just changes everything.
Dudes, I don't know. This was a good one. This was good. We could probably go, like you said, for 3 hours.
More hours.
People have already turned it off, so we could talk about whatever we want. We should talk about the Giants at this point.
You'd be surprised. Our listenership is full. Like literally, we get like 80% all the way to the end. And I think that's probably because I shorten these things down to about 40 minutes max.
That's smart.
Yeah, we covered a lot. We covered a lot.
We appreciate you having us. We sincerely really respect and love you. We think you're just one of the great guys. We really do.
One of the good
guys.
ones. And you authentically live it. And that, like, at the end of the day, the thing that I probably have the least amount of patience for is, you know, I get marketing, I get the need to put on a show, to get, you know, whatever. I think you authentically believe everything that you put on here, and that comes through, and it's part of what makes you special.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. You know, I think I take a lot of shit for it. People break my chops about.
That means you're doing something right, in my opinion.
Soulless internet trolls don't count.
Well, similarly, I have an utmost respect for you guys and what you guys do, and it's been wonderful and amazing to see sort of sit from the sidelines and watch you guys build this thing. I mean, you guys are coming up on a big anniversary, right? Next year is 10 years.
10 years.
Next year's 10.
And that's a lot of time.
Yeah. I told Nate this the other day. It simultaneously feels like 2 years and 40 years.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not one or the other. It's both at the same time.
I guess in closing, what I'd love for you guys to be able to share with the listeners is why? Why do you do what you do? What is the motivation? No, you don't have to build a business and have a bunch of kids and try to create a life for yourself and your family and your friends that's abundant. Why do you think you do it?
I think we were raised by two unbelievable parents that just, you know, built in us this idea that we have to strive. We're strivers. You know, we're like imperfect but striving all the time. And you can get caught up in the trap of never being satisfied. And I think if I think about my biggest weakness, it's that I just kind of am. I don't take enough time to like take a step back and be like, whoa, I can't believe we went from there to there. I'm always like, how do we get from here to that next thing in front? So part of what drives me is this idea of improving and growing and developing in everything. You know, how do I build a better family culture? How do I be a better husband to my wife? How do I be a better CEO and leader? How can I be a better brother and friend? How can I get better speaking on podcasts? That actually, I don't think much about that. But, you know, it's just this idea of like natural desire to improve and grow. And I feel most satisfied and most complete as I feel like I'm giving an honest effort. Not even at the milestones. It's like, I think for me, the thing that matters the most is, did I actually give an effort? So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's tied into the tagline for our company, right? This idea of forever forward, again, pulled from a Walt Whitman quote and poem. I think there is, you know, reflecting on who I have been in the past, and this idea of that you're different people. When I was a kid, I was really fearful. When I was a teenager, I had no self-confidence. When I was a 20-year-old, I was desperate to prove that I could to other people. And I'm 36 now. In my 30s, I've started to care way less about what other people think, and I've started to say, how can I make my parents proud? How can I make my brother proud? How can I support my wife and my kids? And also, like, at the base of everything is like, how can I make myself proud? How can I prove to myself that I can do this? That I can, and it's not about other people. It's not about like, screw the haters. I actually really hate that. It's like, you know, screw who you were in the past and fix yourself to this idea of just constant, steady improvement, because that's really what's going to matter at the end of your life.
Yesterday is history.
Yep.
And
how would you answer the question you just asked us? I'm curious.
No one's ever asked me that question. I also have just sort of a ferocious hunger to make the most of every day in my life. I want to live life to its absolute fullest.
Yeah.
And I know at my core, I love making people happy. And for years, it put me in a really uncomfortable place because I was a people pleaser and, you know, to a fault. And today, I have a healthy balance with it, but I still love making people happy. And I think that ferocious hunger for making the most of life every single day also is, I'm like a real hunter. I just really, really love the journey.
Yeah.
The hunt.
The pursuit.
The pursuit. I love it. I fucking love it.
Yeah.
And I love every morning. It doesn't matter what's going on in business.
Yeah.
It could be, you know, the scariest, like I just want to lift up rocks and find things and figure out how to.
That's what gives you energy. I'm built the exact same way. It's just, it's the process. It's the becoming. When I feel stagnant, when I feel like I'm not chasing something, that's when I'm like not happy.
And progress is so addicting.
Totally.
It really is. It's the best drug on earth.
This was awesome, guys.
Hey, thank you so much.
I'm sure you enjoyed that. I know I certainly did. If you guys did enjoy it as much as I did, every week I ask you to share it with friends, with family, with your foes, with a random stranger. You know, any share the podcast. It is my number one ask is for you to share the cast. My number one ask is for you to share the cast.
This guy,
He's on it.
this guy's full of
Get
them.
out of the pity pond and into the hope hamper and share the podcast.
And into the share cycle.
But also, which would mean a lot to me, my second ask every week is that you write a review. It takes no time, and it really, really, really does help the podcast. It really does. You write a review, ideally a good one, you give us a 5-star rating, and you enter yourself to win a giveaway of a box of Meal One and a bag of Nightcap. But also helps the podcast grow and stay afloat, and, you know, keeps me excited. I love reading the reviews. So please do that. It would mean the world. And if you have not had experience with Rhone, you should definitely change that. You should hop online right now, Rhone.com, RHONE.com, and check out what these guys are doing. And if you're in the New York area, you guys have stores actually out of New York now as well, right?
Yeah,
Yes, we have
15 stores.
3 stores within New York and 11 outside.
So there's brick and mortar stores that are beautiful, amazing experience in the stores. Go check out the stores and feel and touch the stuff yourself, because I mean it's just wonderful. I mean you can just see the quality. Everything is just there, and it's built for really any man, but also with the thought of movement in mind. So there's technology in the material that actually helps motivate movement and helps you to manage the things that happen when movement occurs. I don't know if anybody's ever said it that way, but you guys can take that one.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyways, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Until the next one, peace.